Good afternoon, everybody. This panel is on future technologies. And just to kind of give a prelim as to where we're going to go, we're going to talk about some new future technologies. And what seems to be a very common theme today is competition, time to roll out new technologies, as well as it all takes a team to roll out. And last but not least, we're all kind of technologists today, regardless of your discipline. But first, I'd like to introduce myself because I'm not one of those people that's publicly speaks a lot. But I've actually been in the cable and satellite industry for about 25 years. I got my technology bug back in 1995 when we first built what's now known as the DCF, or Dry Creek Facility.
Yep.
But back then it was 1.0. Today it's probably 5.0 at this point in time because it keeps changing and evolving. From there, I went to work on Wall Street. And on Wall Street, when I communicated and talked to your 401k, your mutual funds, your hedge funds, I was the expert in the cable, satellite, and consumer emerging technology space. And the way I communicated to them was basically say, okay, here's what company A's strategy is, here's the technology, and here's the management team that can execute on that strategy. And so working with a lot of senior management teams like Marwan, and I worked with Darren when he was at Scientific Atlanta, as well as Time Warner Cable, DirecTV. So I really got to know a lot of the senior level management teams and kind of get an understanding as to what the technology was supposed to do, why it was going to be successful. So that's why I kind of assembled here today what I would call my dream team, management team that's going to execute on new technologies. We've got Marwan Fouez, who's now Executive Vice President of Motorola Home. Prior to that, he was CTO of Charter and Adelphia. Then we also have Darren, who is selling Marwan's vision with respect to new technologies. And Darren's a manager of new business development for Cisco and currently focused on a lot of the transition from RF to IP video. Then we have Nancy Hankins, who's the money person. She's the one that says, do we really want to do this? Can we make an ROI on this? Nancy's currently the procurement person for Cricket Communications. She also had the opportunity to work with Marwan at Charter, and also was a founder of her own company called Yipe. Last but not least is Charlotte Field. She, as this room just attested, she's where the rubber meets the road, guys. She's in charge of the network, and she's in charge of the data centers, the call centers, and I have to use my cheat sheet because she's responsible for so many different units.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Huh?
Do it just junk. Junk in the trunk.
But as we all know today, without the network, we can't roll out any new technologies. So I think we've assembled a great team to talk about new technologies out there. But first I want to go to what I would call how I categorize new technologies from an investment standpoint. I look at some of them as being crazy, disruptive, revolutionary, or just plain intuitive. In the crazy category, I'm going to show you an example today of what is the driverless car. This is actually, in fact, does exist. As you can see, the gentleman sitting in the car and the guy with the sunglasses is actually invisible. This technology does exist today and is actually legal in California. So it is kind of one of those crazies, like, yeah, right, and then you go, it might have a shot. The second classification of technology I kind of like to focus on is what also has been a common theme today, is competition or disruptive technologies. The disruptive technologies are things like the retinal scanner. Rebecca was using the retinal scanner to say, here's where her people are looking and how to evaluate. Now, she's got the competitive edge because she's been using that retinal scanner. In this scenario, this is at your grocery store. So by using this retinal scanner, it allows the competitor or the person that's using the technology to get ahead. Alternatively, we also have social media, which has got everyone kind of scrambling for how we're going to go make money at it. because it came upon us so quickly. So that's also disruptive type technologies. And then last one is the revolutionary or intuitive technology, and this is one of my favorites. This is how women get their living room back, because in the first picture, you just have a mirror over the fireplace. So you get your living room, and it's a beautiful living room because you bought all this expensive furniture. But that doesn't make the men happy. Alternatively, we turn it on, and over to the right, we have the television. So it's now a dual-purpose mirror/TV. So not everybody knows that you're couch potatoes. The men are happy because they've got the big screen, and women are happy because they've got their living room. So that's my intuitive type technologies, and that's kind of been the approach for me in looking at and investing in new technologies. This is that three-prong approach. One, whether it's what the strategy is. Two, is the technology going to leapfrog them against the other guy? And three, the management team that executes on all of these. And so with that, I'll lead off with my first question to the panel, and I'll start with you, Marwan. When it comes to technologies, what's your philosophy? What's the attributes that you look at?
With a company that has P&L and responsibility for being profitable, the first rule is does the technology have a business plan attached to it? And I have this saying I use a lot, and I think I stole this from Jim Sittick's. Technology without a business plan is a hobby. And it's true in most of the time. So when we look at our investment in R&D, and now we're part of a huge company, it's Google, if you haven't heard about it, it gets scrutinized a lot. And where do we want to put our investments? What area, what products, what solutions, what our customers want to see, what products we want to develop. So I think it's very important when I meet with PhDs in our R&D organizations that every product I look at, they really consider two things. One is around business plan. Second is the impact and how does it change consumer behavior, and how does it relate to consumers.
Nance?
What do I look at?
Yeah. Now remember, she's the money person.
So I'm also interested, is there a business plan? Is it something that is just really a fun, interesting thing for those on the technical side, or is it something that we can translate into a business product? And then also, what are the sources? Is, the worst thing that someone in a procurement role wants to hear is it's a single source. It's the only vendor out there who makes.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Now that you're on the other side of the table. Never wanted to be on the other side of the table from you.
You never thought you'd hear that from me.
No. So, doing the additional due diligence, is there something similar to this? What makes it so unique and such a have-to-have? And then all of the underlying business terms that would be associated with buying the product, the warranties, the viability of the company, all of those things. So I don't get as thrilled about the product, primarily because I generally don't understand it, unless I have someone like Leslie dumbing it down for me, and that helps me to get it. But primarily the business side of things.
So I was going to tie a couple things together. One is the business plan that both Marwan and Nancy were talking about becomes extremely important, because at the end of the day, I think our business is actually moving much more towards an understanding of true total cost of ownership, and I think that becomes really important. The second thing is the technology, or is it the time for the technology, okay? So I'm going to ask the audience a question. When was video teleconferencing first introduced to the United States of America? Anybody want to venture a guess? Huh? What year? 1960 was the first implementation by AT&T Bell Laboratories, right? Now, unfortunately, it started in 1960, and lots of things happened, and in the 1980s, they revisited it. It still needed a 45 megabit signal, la-di, right? And now you see where we are. So if you actually look at how much money was invested in video, at the time, it was a technology that was really, really cool, but it really didn't have a business case that actually could be could achieve what people would have expected. I also think that one of the things that people need to think about is, how do you make this so intuitive that your grandma or your grandpa could deal with it? Okay, and I think that's one of the things that technologists say, well, I figured it out, so it must be simple. Yeah, right. So, and many of us understand that when we look at some of the things that we roll out and see what the customer behavior is, trying to solve for our problems with the design. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darren.
Yeah, we tend to look at the problem in a couple of different dimensions. When we evaluate the business plan, we focus on two key questions. The first is, and Cisco is primarily a B2B business, right? And so the first thing is, can our customers leverage this technology to increase their revenues, right? How can they implement this technology, and how can they use it to grow their own business? Because that's imperative. And then secondly, as we think about it, we try to think about, is there a way for them to also leverage the technology to reduce cost? So is there a way to either decrease their CapEx or OpEx and create some operational efficiencies as a result of leveraging the technology that we're investing in? But even going beyond that, we try to look at the end user, right? Be that the consumer or someone who has to operate the technology. And to Charlotte's point, ease of use is imperative. I have a former mentor, and one of the things that he used to talk about was, when we think about technology, we have to think about the mirror. And when you think about the mirror, people tend not to think about it from a technology standpoint, but it uses physics, right? I mean, you turn on the light hits the mirror, it reflects back at you, and you see what's on the other side. It may not always be what you want to see, but it is what it is. It always works, right? You turn the light on, it always works. So how can we make technology as easy to use as a mirror, or as close to that as possible? And then secondly, beyond the ease of use, does it improve the end user's life in some way? So, from a consumer standpoint, do they find it entertaining? Do they find that it allows them to save time? Is there something about it that improves their quality of life and therefore makes it valuable? So those are the dimensions that we tend to explore when we look at new technologies.
So in thinking, a lot about ease of use, when it's market timing, I'll throw it out. What's interesting out there that maybe not be available today, but might be in the marketplace, a few years out, that's interesting to you? And it doesn't necessarily have to be telecom. It can be in energy. It can be in gaming. It can be in healthcare. Whatever, it has kind of grabbed your attention recently. Anybody?
Way out there, like how far out there? Because I work for a company that looks ahead like 1 year to 20 years to 30 years. So this is not related to Google, but one thing that I saw recently was really fascinating. So we talk about and joke a lot about having silicon or chips embedded in our bodies. It's real. There are silicon SoCs now that adapt to your skin. We can, like a sticker, you put it on the skin, on your skin anywhere, and then has capability, whether it's a radio or processing or memories, that will interact with any electronics around you. I think that's revolutionary and will change some of the communications that we do, like whether we want to transfer data or video or photos through our bodies between different type of devices.
Yeah, I've actually seen that, and actually I think last year we showed something similar to that, where it was an electronic tattoo, where it's essentially like a circuit board that attaches to your skin and molds to all the ups and downs in your skin. And one of the first applications that I've seen in that area was just monitoring your heart. And if you think about our aging people today, monitoring their blood pressure, monitoring, what their dietary is and their glucose levels and all those kind of things. I think it's kind of a really fascinating way to basically stay in better shape, right? Ultimately.
Well, I also think that, and I think there's a real opportunity in the near term associated with managed care. That doesn't have to be managed care in a hospital bed, as we think about a hospital bed with nurses coming in and taking your oxygenation level and your blood pressure level, et cetera. So intelligent beds that allow information to go back. And if you think about like the Veterans Association, they have a huge problem because we don't have that many vet hospitals, and there's a lot of very sick people that have to be monitored over time. So I think that's a near-term kind of thing that basically is in play, and probably within the next 2 years we'll have a lot more intelligence, whether it be sugar management and automatic. We already have insulin pumps, but this is the insulin pump of, the next 24 to 36 months. People getting LASIK, which with the aging population, congestive heart failure is a big deal, and so LASIK is a drug that basically reduces the amount of fluids that are in their body, so it keeps their heart healthy. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the next 24 to 36 months, where you're not going to have the nurse of the past. You're going to have the nurse actually in a knock, okay, basically controlling 1,000 patients. And you're going to have, those technicians going to the patients that, meet certain criteria that says that they're in trouble. So I think that's number one. Number two, if you actually think about all of the research that's coming out about, the way our bodies have been put together and how much calcium you have and how much, many of the other different products such as magnesium and, et cetera, et cetera. I think over time, with all the brain research that's being done, you're going to start seeing people actually getting their bodies managed into a much more appropriate way, based on the intelligence of what actually exists in your blood and other fluids. So I do think that in the medical community, it's going to be totally, totally different. And you're going to have, real-time capabilities to administer stuff that you don't even have to take those 3 or 4 or 10 pills a day that you might take.
I'll piggyback off of that a little bit, and I think, as we think about the intelligent home and, where we're going with in-home technology and how we're leveraging, the cloud and how we're leveraging broadband to be able to have real-time communication, back to centralized storage points where you can actually monitor this kind of data. And so as you build, monitors into the home that actually sense, the state of the individuals who are in the home, and the profiles are set up so that physicians can proactively reach out, to patients if they feel like, okay, this person's blood pressure level is elevated or their sugar intake is too low or things like that. And so by building these next generation homes and putting the devices in the home that leverage a lot of the networks that, the cable operators have invested in over the past 20 plus years, you start to see where this technology, the convergence of broadband, the convergence of the cloud, and the convergence of all of these very smart, intelligent devices that are always communicating back and forth. We may have started hearing more about the Internet of Things and how devices are always talking, to one another and continuing to communicate to one another. And so by doing so, we'll be able to take advantage of, presence type technologies where, like you mentioned, you don't have to actually have a physician in front of you to be diagnosed, where you can have a call center set up and you can leverage video technologies that allow you to speak to a healthcare professional that may be in a different country, for example, but that is a subject matter expert in the thing that specifically ails you. And so if I can, piggyback on that a little bit, this all goes back to where cloud technology is going. And how more and more intelligence is being positioned in the cloud, intelligent control planes that actually communicate with the different devices and via presence can understand, where that device is physically located, what state it's in, and what communications or what information that it has that it can transmit back. And so this is going to enable a lot of the things that we've been hearing about, over the day or so. Earlier this morning there was some discussion around companion applications and, the fact that the audio recognition is not always reliable. Well, when you have intelligence built into the cloud and you have a smart control plane that doesn't have to physically reside on the device, but that can reach out and message all these different devices, well, now that can handle metadata normalization and allow you to actually synchronize content between what's on the TV and what's on the second screen, right? Or we talk about remotes and the need for, all these different remotes with all these different devices. Well, getting away from that and simply leveraging our phones and our iPads and other tablet types of devices to control what it is that we want to see, whether that's actually searching for content and finding the content that you want and then simply sending it to the screen that you want to view it on, or reaching out and leveraging, I need to take a look and see what time I'm actually supposed to take what pill. So there are a lot of advantages that we're starting to see come about as a result of the combination of these very advanced broadband networks and what you can do in the cloud.
I'm all for getting rid of the remote controls. That's also cluttering up my living room. Moving on to, where do you guys find these ideas? Do they come from small companies? Do they come from within your larger organizations? Do they come from books, movies?
I think all of the above, and I think actually, I always think about, listening to younger people quite candidly about what if, what could be, and I think essentially if a number of us think about, when we were kids and we knew somebody who was a diabetic or whatever, the notion of, well, why do they have to stick themselves with a needle? Why do they have to do this? Why do they have to do that? And then people being curious to understand how I might solve that problem differently. So, I mean, I think that, you look all around and you have to be very, very open to what could be versus what exists today. And I think a lot of us, especially, yes, you have to have a business plan, but you may have to have an introduction, that basically understands the good and the bad and the ugly of the product as you initially put it out.
I mean, I would say ideas are all around us. There are no shortages of ideas. It's how do you mold that idea into an invention? And so the debate that rages on always within companies, whether small or big, is how effective the size of the team that can take an idea and turn it into an invention. And it's almost linear, where the smaller the team, the more effective they are. The bigger the team, the less effective they are. Now, on the other hand, to Charlotte's point, is if we to take that and make it and operationalize that idea, you need a much bigger team around execution, implementation, development, research, et cetera. There's many phases toward the idea from inception all the way to a product that would change people's lives or make sense from a commercial perspective. So it's really everywhere. It's just how effective you can be in bringing that idea to life.
And I think to kind of dovetail off of Brad and Tanya's, where you've got a team, but everybody's coming from different directions, right? And trying to get that team to go into a cohesive direction.
Well, it also depends on the culture. I start to see things with my new bosses at Google that 5 years ago used to have every Fridays. They'll have an audience this big, and some brave souls, like 10, 20 of them, get up on stage, and they'll do the gong show. And you have 1 minute to infinity to present an idea, as long as the audience doesn't do a gong thing to get you off the stage. And from there, actually, there are products we're using today that came out of that culture. Now, they changed that to something different, but those are the things that they have to mold it with culture to get there.
I always like to encourage what I call two guys in a garage. Encourage the innovation from the smaller companies, because I think they help the entire industry in a number of ways. They help to keep the gorillas, as I call them, honest, but also they can innovate faster, they can move faster. You can't always, things don't always work out because of the financial viability of those types of companies, but I think having a balance, a good mix of the large innovative companies who have a lot of money to invest in R&D and really do things slowly and well is very, very good, but it's also important to encourage some of the smaller entrepreneurial type companies to continue to innovate. And the mixture among the groups, I think, make for a very healthy dynamic.
Yeah, similar to the example that Marwan mentioned, we actually hold competitions, and where teams of engineers are encouraged to submit their ideas for what types of technologies or what types of innovations might be very interesting to the industry. And they're encouraged to be cutting edge, they're encouraged to be extremely creative, And the winning teams are recognized within the company, and there are rewards. There are cash rewards that go along with excellent ideas, and there are resources that get devoted towards the very best ideas to see if that idea can become a viable solution, a viable technology going forward. And then we also spend a lot of time, looking at external technologies. We have a number of technology partners out there in the industry, some of whom we actually make investments in to incubate their ideas and help them to actually grow them. And then with others, we partner and we work collaboratively to see if we can take the best of our resources and bring their good ideas to life. And so it's a combination of leveraging the partners and the relationships that we have externally with the intelligence that we have internally within the company to come up with very useful and very innovative technologies.
With the internet and tweeting and social media, everything seems to go viral really fast. But, and to Charlotte's point, Skype, video conferencing has been around since 1960 something. How does that change the rollout of new technologies? In one sense, it takes a long time to get the technology out, but then in another sense, the internet's there and kind of making it viral. So how has that changed over each of your individual disciplines?
The cycles of getting product to market is increasing every single year for many reasons, and it depends on the product complexity. While in the past you may have a software heavy type of development project that could take a couple of years to bring to market, at least that there is consumer ready. I mean, today that because the language used to code, the testing, the automations, that cycle is maybe half as much. How many of you have seen 3D printing? It's really cool. I think it's going to revolutionize manufacturing. It's all about prototyping. Well, it's cool for kids. There's a new Lego type of environment, but it's for manufacturing, it's huge. So for manufacturing, there's a lot of prototyping and testing, all about the efficiencies and the tolerance of the size of each device that they need to. It could be a silicon that you put on in a communication device, or it could be something you put in your car. 3D printing is going to shorten that cycle significantly from what we had before. So I think like I said, the cycle will get shorter, but the product, the depth of the product and the richness of the portfolio of those products will get bigger and bigger. And you have to balance how much of those products you want to get out.
It's an interesting comment because, listening to the group that was before us and thinking about the time frame that Shannon was alive and whatever, and it was not, and I think it was Steve Reynolds that was commenting that the equations have been known a long time. It's not been the equations that have been the problem, and it wasn't the equations that were the problem, from a video perspective either. What it was, the technology catching up with the capabilities of delivering things. So when Marwan talks about the change or what happened that is change or will change how manufacturing is being done, it's technology, and it's also somebody thinking totally out of the box. So I do think that you think about 3.1 and you think about what 3.1 offers to us, both in the next 12, 24, 36 months. I think you're going to see applications that we haven't even thought about, because of the the consumption of bandwidth, that all of a sudden are going to become a reality because people are going to come up with different modulation schemes, whether it be the 4G or the, whatever. It's just going to grow tremendously. And I also think that as we have moved to a much more open source kind of environment where anybody can play in specific areas, that you're going to see a lot more innovation coming forward. And I know that we have a lot of students and student ambassadors, and clearly some of the things that they've come up with are the ones that all of our companies have hired over the last 12 months or so. it's amazing, they go like, wow, what, have we thought about this? And you go like, wow, no, I haven't thought about that. That's actually a pretty cool idea. Let's see whether or not we can make either a prototype or a proof of concept, to make it a reality.
Darren, I think you've got a couple of examples of where the ideas came from kids and ultimately turned into a business.
Well, yeah, if we look at, a lot of the innovations that we're leveraging right now today, when you think about, who were the first people to really jump on the social media bandwagon, you think about, the innovations behind Facebook and Twitter and how young people really drove those types of innovations. And now, within Cisco, we're leveraging, we have a tool, we call it WebEx Social, which is, fundamentally a social media tool that we use internally to be able to share information real time, to effectively text and tweet real time within the organization, which of course helps us improve those development cycles, as Marwan had mentioned, because time to market is such an important factor. And so being able to get information and share information, leveraging our own internal forms of social media is incredibly important. When you look at, it's so funny when you look at, the innovations that Apple has taken advantage of, and you look at the things that they did, they saw that young people had evolved the way that they listened to music and had evolved the way that they actually acquired music. And, instead of running away from that and saying, oh my gosh, this is, the death of the industry, they simply figured out, there's a business model that can be placed around this new form of acquiring music, which of course led to the success of, the iPod and carved the path, for us to eventually have, iPhone and iPad and the smartphone and tablet markets that evolved as a result of that. And so, paying attention to trends that, young people are embracing and paying attention to trends in social media and figuring out, are there ways that we can either A, leverage these for improving our own business in the way that we do business today, or B, reshape and reframe the business model in order to make just a new market opportunity for the industry is just imperative. And so we continually strive to make sure that we do that.
We asked our students, by the way, what technology they would like to see. What exists today that they really like, but more importantly, what doesn't exist, and we will give that student a prize for their response. So that's at the tail end. So we did recognize that, students, kids today, they are our future, and a lot of the good ideas come from them. So in talking about future technologies and rolling out, it all takes a certain amount of risk, because you're going into an area that you're not really sure. You can do a lot of research into the marketplace, but it still takes a risk. And everybody's had their failures and everybody's had their successes. So I guess we learn from the failures, we learn from taking risks. But for this panel, I'm going to say, give me your favorite success story in rolling out something new to the marketplace.
I think, our favorite success story, or at least one of our favorite success stories, is the deployment of telepresence. And when we think about, video conferencing and it being around for so long, and it was exciting. If you look back maybe about, let's say about 8 or 9 years, we were still having problems internally leveraging video conferencing technology successfully. And there were just, too many issues that would arise whenever you tried to schedule a video conference. And so what we embarked upon was a way to improve that process for ourselves, to be able to take advantage of, all the resources that we had internally and leverage video conferencing in a way that would change the game of how we do business. And so the idea behind telepresence was born, and initially it was funny because we used to refer to it as video conferencing on steroids, basically. But the idea of being able to leverage high definition and AVC, advanced video compression codecs, in order to be able to communicate with different Cisco offices all around the world. And eventually, initially we started this off and it became a collaboration tool that we used to be able to talk to one another, and then we used it to be able to bring customers into Cisco offices and have real-time conversations with them and partners and suppliers and everyone else in the value chain. And then we realized that, wait a second, there's a business opportunity for us here. And we started to deploy telepresence with our customers, and it became the fastest growing product in Cisco's history. And so it was incredible when you saw the market adoption, because by making it, again, easy to use, by simplifying the use and basically making it just simply push a button and you're connected to someone on the other end, and you don't have to go through a massive series of steps in order to communicate. We solved a problem that not only Cisco was having, but that a lot of our customers were having as well. So, from our standpoint, by just simply improving or working hard to improve the way that we did business internally, led to, just a hugely successful product for us.
Getting it on 24 helped a lot, too.
Well, yeah, that wasn't so bad.
From my perspective, just overall, the most success in any project is just teaming up with business partners internally. So the engineering people teaming up, having a seat at the table is really critical. Learning about the technology, our business needs, what the customers are looking for, getting insight into that from the beginning and living through the whole planning process. And then from a supplier standpoint, getting their assistance in the rollout, training, resources, making professional services at no charge, Tom, available.
She's still negotiating with you, even though you don't do business with her.
I'll pay for anything Marwan has to sell.
See, it's all about the delivery, Tom.
Anyway, that makes a tremendous difference, being able to set up the entire business model and the business deal with a complete understanding of the operational impacts, the engineering impacts, the customer impacts, and each party rolling up their sleeves and finding a win-win scenario.
So I come from this in a very different way, which is basically as mostly an operations person. I think that my greatest success in looking at, and did it a multitude of times, is really looking at intelligent correlation. And I think, quite candidly, we've come a long way in our industry, and all industries have come a long way, but I just see it as the tip of the iceberg. I still think that there's many more points to correlate issues and concerns, and understanding exactly what's impacting our customers, and being able to address those proactively instead of reactively. And I see that one of the probably largest challenges that's in front of us is the fact that, as Marwan said, we're getting cooler technology, but it's actually much more complicated. And so as you complicate technology, you need to make it simple. And the simple piece is being able to effectively correlate issues and resolve them quickly with, basically self-healing kinds of situations.
I'm going to build on something that Nancy just said, and that is being part of a team and enjoying what you're doing and being successful. I mean, I'm sure all of us can point to many examples in launching products, but I'll go back to 95, 96, Kevin Casey and I. That time, Kevin is with Comcast right now. Continental Cablevision were some of the first operators to launch cable modems, and Kevin Casey and I were competing to who launches his first cable modem. And Kevin beat me, actually, because I announced it in the Northeast. I was in LA, but we had some of the toughest network out there, I think, in cable to get a two-way working. And I look back at that as a transformational product that we launched that helped set the industry around cable and broadband.
I remember when we first rolled out digital cable and did the first big set-top box order, and that was always my favorite success story. It was also an all-nighter negotiation, but
How much did they cost back then?
I think the average price of the whole $3 billion purchase, which included 3 different series of DCTs, was $300. That was the mandate that John Malone gave us, and he said the average price has to be $300. And so it took us all night to come up with the ways and the configuration to meet that number. And being the finance person, I accidentally rounded in the calculations, and it almost cost the company an extra $25 million. And I went, wait a minute. I rounded. We're going back. It's really 300 or 299.50, you know. So, yeah, that was my favorite success story, was rolling out digital cable and being part of the finance person on that particular initiative. First, we will give the student the award. The award goes to Mr. Joel Hessian. He's a high school student interested in computer network and engineering and business. His idea was the indestructible laptop that folded into the size of an iPad, but it also can unfold into a 24-inch screen. It also has a battery life of 2 days. We'll get there. And Charlotte also added that she would like the weight to be less than 20 ounces.
Yep.
And not only just go from an iPad size to 24-inch, she wants the intermediate size of 12 inches as well. Mm-hmm. So Joel, are you in the audience?
Yay!
And thank everybody for making your contributions. They were quite fun to look at. And from here, I think we'll go to Q&A.
Is there a question in the back?
Yes, right there.
Go ahead.
I have a grandma who is physically impaired, and so I want to know how soon is it able to have a TV in her room that really doesn't require a remote control, that she can just lift her hand and touch and scroll through TV guides and stuff, and be able to see clearly like she was using glasses. And also in like movies like Star Trek, I say, a physical digital interface where you can touch and it'll do what you do. You know?
So it's not too far out there. There are a lot of products today that use gestural control. So you use your hands to control guides, user interface on television, and it's no different than Kinect. I'm sure you play Kinect a lot. So there are a lot of products today that are in the markets. They're still quite pricey, and so with time, that product will get more mainstream. We'll be able to integrate within our products and sell it to Charlotte. So she could.
Nancy's got to buy
She
it.
could, Nancy as well. So, I mean, I would say less than 5 years, you'll see a lot of gestural type of user interface management.
And this will be held on everything electronic?
Well, mostly, I think, initially on managing large screens, because the ability to, you cannot be next to that screen. You either have to use your smartphone, tablets, or your clunky remote control to manage that large screen. And for the elderlies, obviously large prints and the ability to see what icon to get to is very important. For smaller screen, you're there. I think you use this to get there. So you want to take the second part?
Which was this? I'm sorry, what was the second part?
And the interface, like on Star Trek, where if you put your hand up, you can, no, let's say more like Iron Man. Have you seen Iron Man?
No, but my son has.
Tony Stark has this little setup where he can touch it and move it and palm it in his hand, and then throw it on something else, just like he does with his kind of self. How soon do you think they'll be available for everybody?
Yeah, like a holographic image that you can manipulate, is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit further off, but I think, yeah, hologram, yeah. But, I would say we need folks to think that way, to essentially say, how do you make it a reality? I think, like Marwan says, I think that the ability to actually change things initially with a touch screen is not too far away. I think the other thing, one big question in my mind, I'm very interested in biomedical technology and what could happen, especially with disabled folks, whether they are limited in their walking or movement of other parts of their body, the ability to communicate through the brain what you really want to have happen. And I think that we're already seeing some of that right now with the ability to control certain muscles. And I really think that, we're not too far away from a huge breakthrough in that particular kind of technology that would be able to provide that same kind of capability in a different way.
You can use a tablet device today to actually, control the user interface on a TV, and two, to be able to take, for example, if you're watching content on a tablet and simply fling it to the television set, you can do that using a tablet and an advanced IP-centric UI right now. So.
Okay, I think I want to thank the panelists, and I want to thank the audience.